Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. March 11th marks the 4-year anniversary of the triple meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was triggered by a tsunami from the Pacific Ocean earthquake. It is considered the worst nuclear accident on record since the 1986 meltdown at Chernobyl. 4 years later, how are the people in Fukushima doing? According to a recent poll, 71% of local residents remain dissatisfied with the central government's handling of the disaster. With us to discuss all of this and to give us an update of what is happening after the disaster is Chiho Kaneko. She is an artist and a journalist based in Vermont. She has reported from Japan since the Fukushima disaster. She's a member of the board of directors at Fairwinds Energy Education. Thank you so much for joining us, Chiho.
Thank you for having me today.
So, Chiho, what does it look like? Is Fukushima populated? Have people moved back? And what is life like there?
So the life those people who used to live in the area where now is considered to be evacuation order zone, the life has changed so much, and in some ways, some of those people's life will never be the same. I would say a lot of people's lives will never be the same. And but then again, there are a lot of people who live in Fukushima and in areas where it was never classified as evacuation order zone, and yet the radiation levels remain even today quite high. In fact, the level of radiation, it's like air radiation levels in like big cities, including Fukushima City and Koriyama City, are so high that it might be actually classified as the radiation radiation controlled area, even in this country or in Japan, under normal circumstance. So I think these are not the kind of areas where people are really not supposed to be living under a normal circumstance, and yet they do.
And are we seeing any signs of health and other issues manifesting as a result of the high radiation levels?
Well, that's a very tricky question because a lot of people, especially mothers, they fear that some of the symptoms that they see in their children might be related to radiation. When people have respiratory illnesses and other things, but then officially there hasn't been any conclusive announcement that there has been any health consequence. In fact, that the Fukushima prefecture, in conjunction with the central government and also Fukushima Medical University, they have been following the children in Fukushima who were under age 18 at the time of the disaster. And they have been testing for thyroid. And initially, they didn't want to test until maybe 3 years later, saying that in Chernobyl, they say until maybe 4 or 5 years later, the thyroid cancer didn't show up. But then people started to really protest that perspective, saying that, maybe there weren't enough data during those first 3, 4, 5 years after Chernobyl accident because Soviet Union was crumbling. And so, it's really, the onus is on the government, Japanese government, to really make sure that negative consequences will not happen to children. So they really lobbied hard, and so the government started to follow children soon after the 2011 disaster. And what's happening is that they are discovering that a staggering number of children, I think the latest number is something like 118 children among 385,000 population, either confirmed or highly suspected of having thyroid cancer. And statistically speaking, that is a staggering number because prior to this disaster, it's been said that the maybe thyroid cancer among children were 1 to 2% per million. Some might say 7 in a million, but still, comparing to those numbers, it's a staggering number.
Now, many people, according to that survey I cited in the intro, remain really disappointed with the way that the government is responding to the disaster, and they're not really sure that the government is capable or has the ability to respond adequately. Why is that so?
I don't necessarily think it's just a question of capability. Of course, the government had to deal with the earthquake, the tsunami, and the nuclear disaster at once. So, in a way, it was a very overwhelming situation. That said, had there been a determination and also a different sort of a priority in the government policy, they could have done a lot better. At least that's the sentiment that I get by speaking with people in Fukushima and beyond. And one sort of a issue that's making the situation a little more complicated is that there is definitely pressure from the world nuclear industry to sort of control the data and information coming out of this disaster. So they, maybe funding a lot of seminars and sort of public events, almost like trying to frame the situation in their favor, which is basically to paint a picture that maybe this wasn't such a big disaster, such a serious disaster.
So one of the questions, I guess, in everyone's mind is if this area is contaminated and the area is also completely destroyed as a result of the tsunami, why wasn't there, like a more thorough evacuation of the area done in order to clean up and get it in better shape for people to live in? Why was that not followed through on?
Well, in a way, they are actually doing what you described as, the sort of cleanup in the name of decontamination work. But, the air is so large that, the contaminated area, and also the level of radiation in some areas is extremely high. So in a way, it's not possible to remediate that quickly. It might take a long time. And even with the so-called decontamination work, which is basically scraping soil and organic matter such as grass or leaves, and then just bundle in huge bales and plastic bags and then just try to sort of push away. But radiation level doesn't go away. It's not like they would decompose and dissipate, it just sits there. And where are you going to house them ultimately? Well, they're now starting to move a lot of contaminated soil and such in bags to more 1 or 2 locations around the Fukushima and Daiichi nuclear power plant. But the amount of contaminated soil in terms of the number of bags is incredible.
And what are scientists saying? Is this area occupiable in the future, or should there be evacuation of the area completely?
I don't know why we have to ask scientists that because nobody really knows what the effect is going to be, even at the lower level of radiation, what the effects are going to be. So that's a problem. And some people might say, I'm too old. I mean, I'm old, so I'm not going to worry about dying in 5 years. Some people might say that and then to choose to go back. And I think that's a legitimate sentiment. So, but then, of course, children who do not have a choice of their own, and so they're also a lot more radio sensitive. How are we going to protect their health? Because they are the future. And to me, that's more important than, say, sort of a blanket statement of whether people should be allowed to go back or not allowed to go back. I'm sorry, I'm not really explaining really well, but that sort of is the reflection of how complicated emotionally and even scientifically this whole thing is.
And normally when there's this kind of an earthquake and a disaster zone, there's a lot of international agencies that come to work in these areas. I am reading and assuming that this is not the case when it comes to Fukushima because of the dangers it poses to the aid workers themselves. What are your observations?
That I don't know that. I don't know about that. But then I also know that the Japanese government and Tokyo Electric Company, for the most part, have tried to contain the situation on their own. That much I can tell. And also there are occasionally, some international experts usually trying to sort of tell people that based on the Chernobyl experience, you're going to be okay. That sort of seminars.
And what is happening to the plant itself? Has it been repaired?
No, it's not repairable. It's still, for the most part, human being cannot go near it. And I think a lot of site work, which is trying to remove the debris and trying to encase the defunct reactors and whatever. The work has been done with remote operation, and not only that, the current biggest issue in Japanese media is that the contaminated water leak from the site. And, there's groundwater and there's rainwater, and they all pass through the site and sort of basically going into the Pacific Ocean, and the level of radiation extremely high. So they haven't been able to contain that. And so that's a great concern.
Chiho Kaneko, I thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some idea of what's happening on the ground in Fukushima.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.